atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger, ready to move out.
You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?
This town needs an enema.
Riddle me this, riddle me that. Who's afraid of the big black bat?
When Gotham is ashes, you have my permission to die. Gotham! This is your liberation.
My mother warned me about getting into cars with strange men.
This isn't a car.
20 years in Gotham. How many good guys are left? How many stayed that way? He has the power to wipe out the entire human race.
Tell me, do you bleed? You will.
I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
He's a silent guardian. A watchful protector. A dark knight. I'm Batman.
Let the games begin.
Welcome to the Batman on Film podcast. Here are your hosts, Bill Jett Ramey and Rick Shue.
Hey now, welcome to Volume 2. Oh, you like that, hey now?
I love
Volume 2, Episode 39 of the Batman on Film podcast. We are the sponsor and a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network, BatmanPodcastNetwork.com. With me today, back is my co-host, Rick Shue. How you doing, Rick?
Bill, I'm great. I feel like your voice is becoming sort of a Texas-Minnesota hybrid.
No, I'm a straight-up Texan voice, dude.
I don't know. We'll let her...
I can
hear the chewing tobacco. He's from Texas.
Yes, I had that tobacco.
No, I understand. I understand that there's a lot of text in there. I'm just saying that everybody listening, just re-listen to that intro he just did and tell me if you don't hear some Minnesota in it.
Okay, all you Minnesota listeners, come tell us if you hear any traces of a Minnesota accent in my voice. My wife lost her Minnesota accent, man. Down here, she goes back to Minnesota, and they say, "Golly, you sound like you're from Texas." But anyway, let's move on. All right. Also with me today is Justin. Justin, how you doing out there in California?
I'm doing pretty good. I just came back from vacation at the beach. So.
What?
Yeah, a little 4-day jaunt out in Santa Barbara. It was nice.
Nice. And Ryan, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing really good because I have a brand new, let's see if you can hear this, Crystal Pepsi.
Oh.
Which is great because it's like, I think it's one of the coolest soft drinks behind things like Dr. Enough or a Diet Coke with a bat cape on it, if you remember the old 89 commercials.
Batman 89.
Yeah.
Listen.
I recreated one of those once just because I was like, that looks so cool. I need, and I think it tastes better.
You know, several years ago when we were getting my bar up and running and everything was under construction, Pepsi actually came to visit us. And I said, "Man, you're a real nice guy, but nobody in Dallas wants a Crown and Pepsi, or a Jack and Pepsi. They want, Jack and Coke." Anyway, I think there's definitely like a geographical divide where that's concerned, right? I mean,
I would say that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's pockets of Pepsi, like politics maybe, pockets of people that like Pepsi over Coke.
I don't personally like sodas, period, so it doesn't matter to me. It's always interesting to hear that. I'm like, I've never heard anyone actually order like a Jack and Pepsi.
No, I haven't either, or a rum and Coke. It's just all rum and
Coke.
Rick, what are all soft drinks referred to as in Texas?
It's just all Coke, man.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you want a Coke? What kind? Give me a 7-Up. So I don't drink sodas either.
It depends what you got. Sailor Jerry's mixes well with Pepsi.
Yeah. My wife, it's pop. Everything, it's pop.
Yeah.
Pop. And anyway, let's move on and talk about something that a little bit more substance. It would be called Suicide Squad, which is already in its second weekend, which basically started last night. Rick, since you were not here last weekend, you were on I-45 North. You were probably actually in the Woodlands by the time we were doing this.
Yeah, I was having an amazing brunch when you guys were doing the podcast with my lovely wife. So,
and I'm going to check out that place maybe this weekend or sometime soon.
I would love to plug it right here. Do you remember the name of it? I don't.
Golly,
I don't know. There's a brunch spot in the Woodlands, Texas that is one of the top 3 I've been to anywhere.
What was the name of that place? You're the one that told me about it.
I can't remember. I can't get Firewater out of my head, which is a great restaurant here in Allen, Texas, but that's not it. Starts with an F. Anyway,
Okay, we'll come.
Maybe. Anyway, it was phenomenal. So yeah, I missed it, but we were having some pretty stellar food in a Bloody Mary flight. So
Yeah, that's cool. And a lot of people missed you. I saw some of the comments, so I'm sure everybody, all your fans, are glad to have you back on. But
fans, I don't know about that. Listen, I think that when any of us are gone, that this thing is not as good. We're a hell of a team, right, guys?
Oh
we're
yeah,
the Suicide Squad. Yeah, jeez.
All right,
Rick.
Rick, go. Just real quick, talk about how you felt about the film. Now, you and I watched it together. We had our get together, Batman on Film get together, and a lot of people went. They never come say anything to us because I had them. They emailed me and said, I saw you and Rick at the movie, and I said, why didn't you come say something to us? Well, I didn't want to bother y'all. And I'm like, well, the point is to come visit. But anyway, whatever. Rick, what did you think about Suicide Squad? I know your review came out last Monday and so forth. So, but just in person here, tell the listeners what you think and what you think now. Maybe your opinion has changed a little bit.
Well, I haven't had an opportunity. I wanted to go see it again before this podcast, and I had every intention to. I just, like we were talking about off mic a moment ago, I've been buried with work, so I'm gonna go see it again next week. I want to see it in 3D, and I basically stand by my review. I didn't hate it by any means. I enjoyed a great deal of it. I stand by a C+. I think that the performances are just phenomenal. I mean, I'm finding it very strange that Jared Leto's performance is getting such backlash. I absolutely loved him in the role. I thought he was fabulous, and in fact, I wanted more. This whole thing about whether or not he was on film enough and that was advertised in a way where it gave the implication that he had more screen time. To be honest with you, I thought his screen time was necessary for the film. I wanted more of him for just self-serving reasons, and I would love to see more of an actual film dedicated to he and Harley's relationship. That stuff was just off the charts great, and then Will Smith has never been better, and he wasn't someone I was necessarily doing backflips for when I found out the casting, and I thoroughly enjoyed his performance. I think it's one of his best performances in years, and I don't have anything to say anything negative about the cast. I probably still wish Tom Hardy was Rick Flag. Nothing against the gentleman that played him. I just would like to have seen him in the film. But the movie itself is a mess. It's the C+. That's writing on the performances, and that's a big deal. That's a huge compliment because really this film should be a D. And I say that because first of all, it was amateur hour in the editing room. There are so many continuity issues with the editing that it's almost embarrassing. I'm like, man, I can watch better continuity editing on Small Wonder reruns. What's going on here? And there's a reference, by the way, that's really showing my age. Ryan, Justin, Small Wonder?
Yeah, I remember Small Wonder.
Okay.
I have no clue
the
what
robot.
you're talking about.
Okay, it's really, really bad early.
Okay, let me ask you this, Rick, since you brought up the editing. Do you think that has anything to do with the that there were two cuts of the film? There was a Warner Brothers executive cut, and there was David Ayer's cut that he wanted to put out. Of course, he's a director.
Ayer said there had been a lot of different cuts.
Yeah, I heard 6 cuts.
Yeah.
So,
no
well,
lie.
that even makes it even. That's even worse in my opinion.
Listen, there's a reason for this, and so I'm not going to dismiss what I think is probably the most obvious reason, which is what you're talking about. So it's impossible to say that that's not the case because the editing is a mess. I mean, that's empirically speaking. There's no one that would argue that the editing was fine. Mm-hmm. No one that knows anything about filmmaking anyway. And then I did not understand the choice of villain, and particularly the CGI cheese fest that unfolds for the last hour of the movie that was more intoxicating than watching the last hour of Ghostbusters, the new Ghostbusters. And I mean that, like, I'm not trying to be funny when I say that. Very similar in style in terms of the CGI and whatnot, but it was just very poorly done. It looks terrible. And it's just, I can't think of a better word than cheesy. I mean, all of this, it's like a bad 80s horror film or something. I can't even, like, Warlock. I don't get it. And I
also don't know.
And it's a mismatch because it's the scene where the actual squad is together and their dialogue and their chemistry is so good and it's so gritty and it's so fun and it's so decadent and sexy and all the above. that it's unfortunate because that film is screaming to be a great film, and it has so many components to be. It's just not, and I'm really nervous to see it again. I'm excited to see it again because I want to see these performances and these characters I love again. But at the same time, I'm nervous, guys, because I feel like I'm going to like it less, and that's going to be unfortunate. That's where I stand on this.
All right, so let me throw out some numbers to you all, and then we'll move on from there and see where that brings us. All right. Of course, we're in our second weekend of Suicide Squad's release. First weekend, it made $133,682,248 here domestically. As of last Thursday, so before the weekend, it sits at $179,104,728 domestic, and with an overall box office take worldwide of $370,604,728. Let me remind you, because Rick, you weren't here last weekend, the goal is this film, for it to be considered the most basic success by Warner Brothers, it has to make $300 million or more domestic, and it has to go over $600 million worldwide. Yeah. So here's how we stand. Well, not as we stand, but according to Deadline and their box office projections for the weekend, they are expecting, it looks like it's going to have a 69% drop, which is on par with Batman v Superman. It also would tie it with BVS and X-Men Origins Wolverine for the worst drop, second weekend drop from first to second weekend in history for this genre. The projection is now for 41.9 million. Of course, that'll put it over 200 million domestic and over 400 million worldwide, and then the race is on from there to see if it can get to those numbers that I mentioned, which would be considered a success for the studio. So, guys, what do you think about that news, Ryan? Since you brought it up, you sent me the link to it, and yeah. I'd actually already found it, but since you had already read the article, and obviously we're interested in it. So, what's your thoughts on that?
I think that it's kind of indicative that it's kind of a repeat of BVS in terms of you've got bad critical response, and that's also kind of translating to a cinema score that's not super positive and
B+
and mediocre word of mouth, So it's again, we just like BVS, this second week drop is indicative of a film not having legs or not really connecting with the mainstream as much as it could or should have. And that's
Justin, what do you think?
Man, it's hard for me because I really enjoyed the movie. I get all the negative stuff. I mean, yeah, it's a rough weekend because.
Would you agree with Rick in his assessment, or are you a little bit more positive in some regards?
I agree with Rick. I think I just pulled more stuff out of it that I enjoyed. Like I enjoyed the cast and I enjoyed like the world building. Yeah. I completely agree with I didn't like the ending. I said that last week. I wish there was a different villain, but I still had fun with it. I went into it as I like this movie. Like last week I wanted to say this, but I just think the biggest problem we have right now is we have a Dark Knight problem. Everything is going to be compared to Dark Knight. Dark Knight was perfect. It's like you can't touch it, but at the same time, not every movie that comes out that's superhero is going to be on that level. It's just not going to happen. And
or try to replicate that experience.
Yeah. The problem with the DC extended universe is it hasn't had its Dark Knight yet for us to oh man, this is so good so that you can dip down a little bit, because everything's going to be on the next film's shoulders. Like, oh man, Suicide has to do this or else it's not successful. Like now Wonder Woman has to do this because now it's all on Wonder Woman's shoulders.
Yeah.
So
you can only do that so many times.
Before it gets a little you feel beat up. So right now with Suicide Squad, I was like, all the expectations are on Suicide Squad to be, this is the actual start of the DCEU where it's going to be amazing and everyone's going to be excited and high-fiving in a theater, and it just didn't happen. But I looked at Suicide Squad as, popcorn, and I had fun. I had fun with it, but I totally get and I agree with Rick. I feel like, it was messy in the editing, and the villain was I felt like it was more like Ghostbusters 1 from the 80s,
So you're even going back that far?
Yeah, I was like, man, Gozer is going to come out at the end, and, but in the end, I had fun because the cast made me have fun, and I totally like bought them as a team and all the chemistry that they had. But yeah, I 100% agree with it. I just enjoyed it more. You know, I give it a B.
Yeah.
But
well, I think, go ahead. Let me say this, Rick, because I was going to jump to you anyway. I think we would all agree that what saves this film is the cast.
Yeah.
The cast is great. And so I want to hear your thoughts, Rick, on what Justin said, you know, because you've been saying this. Well, now it's all on Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman. But now Suicide Squad is basically, it's here, but it's going to be going quickly. And now our eyes are going to be going toward Wonder Woman. And is it going to be the savior of the DCEU? So what's your thought on that?
In terms of the masses and what critics are saying about this universe so far, is that this whole thing stinks. We are now 3 films in, and they are a critical mess. And the problem is that these films are getting worse. And I say that from a critical standpoint and, quite frankly, from my own personal standpoint. I like Batman v Superman substantially better than I like Suicide Squad as a movie, right? There's a lot of things about Suicide Squad I love. And, again, it's on the verge of greatness because Justin is right. It's the cast. The cast is, don't touch them. Give them a better platform. Let's put them in a film that works because they deserve it. And we as fans and as audience members deserve to have them live on with these characters because I don't want to see these guys recast and all this try to get rebooted and shuffled around. And the one good thing is that they're so knee deep in this that's next to impossible for them to do at this juncture anyway. We're moving forward with these characters whether we like it or not. And quite frankly, I do. That's the positive thing is that whether it's Henry Cavill as Batman, Henry Cavill as Superman, Affleck as Batman, any of the aforementioned people from Suicide Squad as their respectable characters, I don't want that touched. So what has to happen is that I think that so much of this still comes back to Zack Snyder. And Justin's right. There's a lot of fun things about Suicide Squad. The issue that I'm having or that I'm seeing, and I tried to articulate this in my review, and for some reason I'm having a hard time writing it, and I'm having even a more difficult time saying it in terms of just how to phrase it. But basically, all
right. Well, bring it up. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. No, it's when I say difficult, I mean just trying to put the right words on this. But I feel like there's a tonal like tug of war. It was fun, but it wasn't fun enough, and it was the dark stuff might have been too dark or not dark enough. It's like commit. Be something.
Well, here's the thing, Rick. Is what I wonder. Is all of this stemming from the fact that they are trying to remain filmmaker driven? You give somebody like Zack Snyder carte blanche to do something like Batman v Superman, and yet not make that movie really put the best foot forward for an entire cinematic universe because you're letting one guy kind of run the whole thing. And so now that's like snowballed, and now they're having to course correct it.
Great. Well, I think that's a great point. And even Rick, I understand because we talked about this, Rick, on the phone when you were driving back to Dallas last weekend. I'm very much in favor of the filmmaker-driven approach as over producer-driven like you have with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. However, that very much this filmmaker-driven approach was perfect with Chris Nolan in the Dark Knight trilogy because it existed in its own universe, and there was no concern or there was no need to worry yourself about other films and other films beforehand or other films in the future with a united or unified cinematic universe. That may be an issue. It may be an issue that you can't do this. You can't have a cinematic universe where everything is connected and be filmmaker driven. And maybe that's just not the case. I go back to what Chris' suggestion, his recommendation to Warner Brothers was, hey, you make as many DC films as you want, but if you want quality films, you need to continue to be filmmaker driven. Don't worry about a shared universe. Let them be their own things in their own universe.
But we're not. That's not going to happen.
I know. They're still trying to be both. They're still trying to be filmmaker driven, but yet have a shared universe at the same time. And maybe it's already happened with Jeff Johns, the creation of DC Film. Maybe that's just the way it is going to be now, because maybe with the fact that Snyder's influence on even his own film Justice League has been reduced tremendously, is a sign of that. It was probably too far along to make any difference with Suicide Squad. Who knows with Wonder Woman? You know, who knows what's going to go forward. So go ahead, Rick. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I do agree with you. But I had to bring that up.
No, and listen, I think this still goes back to, we talk about it being filmmaker-centric and everything. I think that the problem is the filmmaker that was selected to do this. And when you set the framework for this with such contentious films, I mean, let's look at Suicide Squad. And I understand that David Ayer directed it. I get it, but it still was under the umbrella of the Zack Snyder universe. And what I'm hoping is that maybe this gets self-corrected now because he is, you know, on his way out, so to speak, and Jeff Johns is taking over. And then hopefully that helps because, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's really the problem with Suicide Squad or not. I don't know. I feel like, you know, the quote from the gentleman who wrote a review for Batman on Film, and I feel terrible. I'm going blank on his name.
Rick Lyons?
His quote about you know, his quote about how this film, how he encapsulated this film was perfect. And Bill, you put it up on Batman on Film. You said this is a great takeaway from BOF such and such on.
Robert?
Yes, Robert. Thank you, Robert.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were referring to your own review.
Do you happen to have that quote? Because that quote is perfect. Like, this film was intended to be. I think it's important to read that quote because I think that's spot on.
All right, Robert said, Suicide Squad ultimately comes across as the uneasy compromise of a director that was trying to make Escape from New York and a studio that wanted Guardians of the Galaxy.
Boom.
There you go.
That's it. That is, I mean, that's a mic drop.
Yeah. I think compromise is the key word there. His vision got compromised.
Yeah.
Escape from New York, studio wanted Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's where I feel like a lot of stuff was cut with the Joker stuff. Like, they completely sidestepped all the Joker Harley like relationship stuff where it could have got dark.
Yeah.
You know, all the physical abuse and that's a lot of the stuff that was cut, like Joker and Harley, you know, getting into the physical altercations, and I think they were freaked out by that, and that's
other than the you know, I'm just gonna hurt you really, really bad with the electric shock. That's the only time you see him even remotely abusing her. And when I was at the press junket at the press conference, Margot Robbie even said she read several books about domestic violence and women being the target of domestic violence. None of that was in there. So obviously she was prepping for that kind of you know, psychology or some of the scenes she would film in Suicide Squad, but they never were shown in the actual theatrical.
And they weren't, and it still has, the film as it stands still has this sexism backlash, and even with all that cut out, which I never want to take away from any woman thinking something is sexist because I don't walk in their shoes, and I'm very sensitive to that. I don't get it with what we've seen, and I don't know. Have you guys seen this, read this? I mean, it's in many reviews. It's not just like people on Facebook talking. There's articles being written about it in Vanity Fair and Hollywood Reporter that this is a sexist movie, and that's with all that stuff cut out.
Part of that drives website hits, you know.
Yeah.
And to bring it up, just because, you know, I mean, let's face it, she looks really hot in the movie, and there's several shots that are framed that accentuate some of her better assets, if I should put it that way. You know?
But that's not the focus. It's not her being hot.
Part of that is. Come on,
it's
Rick.
about no. But I'm saying they specifically.
But that's the reason they get bent out of shape about it, and they try to mask it with these, you know, uppity types and feminist type articles.
Well, they do mention that women get punched in the face in this film not once but twice. And the first time it happens, the perpetrator says, you know, she had it coming, and then and there's things like that are
but then he gets killed, so
right, he gets killed.
All's good.
No, believe me, and I've debated this online. I'm like, okay, this is a strong female cast. I mean, two of these women are ass kicking mofos. I mean, give me a break. But
no, it's funny because the whole movie is like an equal opportunity movie. Honestly, everybody has something for everyone to be a hero or get punched in the face, and it's actually kind of refreshing, really.
It's absolutely. But here's a question, and my wife brought this up again, and I want to ask you guys, because Bill and I talked about it off camera. There's the scene where Batman rescues Harley Quinn, rescues, and it appears that he kisses her.
No, it doesn't. He's
Yeah,
giving her.
Hold on. I understand that one can say he gave CPR, but you watch that scene again. It's not. That's not. There's more to it than him like giving her CPR. And first of all, she's out because he punched her and knocked her out. Right? She was conscious underwater, so he punched her and knocked her out. So why would he need to give her CPR anyway?
It's not the first time in the movie where she's played dead either.
Right. I guess my point is there anything that you guys read into that scene at all, or what did you think?
I thought that last week I was like, it felt like did he kiss her? But looking back, it was more him trying to resuscitate her, regardless of whether she was knocked out or not. That I think they were going for. Hey, he's gonna give her mouth to mouth, and then Harley pulls a Quinn on him and turns it into a kiss, and he backs off.
What I like
that's exactly what it was, because I've seen it 4 times now, and that's exactly what it was. He almost looks hesitant.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
To even begin the CPR, and it's her doing the whole starts kissing Batman like just to repulse him and do a Harley thing. So no, I don't.
Well, maybe. And listen, I don't think that scene's quite as black and white as you guys are but I'm going to see it again. It's going to be an interesting thing to watch. Anyway, I love the scene. I love them and the roles. I just wanted to throw that out there because
there would be no point in even having any kind of subtext of Batman being attracted. I mean, that's where you would have to go with that. Is he attracted to her? And so he's going to take advantage of her while she's passed out. Come on, Rick. There's none of that in there.
Wait, this is the same Batman that's murdering people in his films, Bill.
Well, I know that.
All right,
I don't think
it's
they're
the
going to
same
go
Batman
that
that's
far.
popping Vicodin and drinking wine while he's next to like.
Well, he's not doing that anymore. This is after. Yeah. This is after.
He's been redeemed by the wooden box funeral.
Which some of it is after BVS, but some of it is clearly before Batman v Superman because Harley becoming Harley. That's before Batman v Superman.
Yeah.
There's a lot of flashbacks. So. And by the way, the scene with them at Ace Chemicals, that's my favorite scene in the whole movie.
Yeah.
It's so awesome.
Yeah.
I want more of that feel in that film where he says to her, will you die for me? And she says yes, and he says, will you live for me? And I just thought, ooh, what a that's a great line. Yeah. And yes, Ace Chemicals. So guys, I know when you saw that, and I wrote the review, and I put Axis Chemicals, and then some guy said, "Hey, I quit reading after Axis Chemicals," and I did a head tilt. I did a head tilt, and I went, "Oh shit!" I said, "Damn it!" I said, "Hey, I'm sorry, I had Burton on the brain." I said, "Bill, hurry up and edit this before I start going off about Oswald's origin story being definitive Penguin Man from the sewer abandoned by Pee Wee Herman." So,
well, I did correct it. I even had an editor's note in there.
That's funny. I wrote that so confidently and didn't even think. And then and again, even when he said it, it took me a second. I was like, what? Oh, crap. Yes, sorry.
Which brings up why didn't they just call it Ace Chemicals and Batman '89? Why did they think Axis Chemicals? But anyway, that's a whole different conversation.
That's a whole different conversation.
So here's a thing to add to this. This is one reason why I got the Suicide Squad novel, written by some guy named Marv Wolfman, and it does clear up the whole CPR thing in the novel at least. And yeah, it's totally. I can actually read it. It's pretty short. Gripping her firmly, he swam back to the surface. Reaching land, he lay her on her back and administered chest compressions. No response. Only one more thing to try. It was repulsive, but her only hope. Batman put his mouth to hers. This woman who had just tried to kill him. He alternated breaths with more chest compressions. Suddenly, she wrapped her arms around him, turning CPR into prolonged kiss. He fought and pulled away. She coughed and looked up. Why the favor, Bats? She asked. Batman glowered at her. Joker took something important away from me, he growled. It's my turn. There you go.
There you go. I bet you
he
had them rubber lips, too, from Batman and Robin.
Yep.
Fit them on.
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
They're immune to her charms.
Anyway, so there we go with Suicide Squad. So let's ask this, Bill. What's your next question? Because I'm curious to know what everybody thinks in terms of, and I don't want to jump ahead here, but where do we go from here? What's the...
Okay, well, let's talk about that. Where do we go from here? I guess, first of all, we're going to see what happens this weekend with the box office. Let's say that, playing devil's advocate here for the rest of the show, let's say they don't reach their goal of 300 million plus domestic and 600 million plus worldwide. What's going to happen? I mean, it's something we saw things happen after Batman v Superman underperformed. If this underperforms tremendously, then something's going to happen.
Well,
you know?
and maybe some of this is already been corrected. Maybe this is all Zack Snyder. They're all looking at this saying, "Look, we got to ride this wave out, but this is all about to end." Who knows?
Well, hopefully they've course corrected one way after BVS, and maybe Suicide Squad got affected a little too much with the competing edits and all that kind of thing. Yeah. Or maybe the film itself was also in trouble. Who knows? But the point is, I think that they maybe intervened a little bit too much in Suicide Squad, and so now after BVS they started enacting some changes. So maybe now that Suicide Squad's out and all these changes are in, they can course correct back just a little bit more the other way to try to really right the ship this time.
Well, here's the thing I worry about is the course correction and, you know, making DC film and giving Ben Affleck more power and Jeff Johns and John Berg and all this other stuff. But I'm talking about the audience here. Do people even give a damn about the DC cinematic universe? Rick, what do you think?
No, not on the mainstream. I mean, the good news about mainstream, and I've given this some thought because we've talked about this ad nauseum in terms of, you know, they don't care, they're not excited. At the same time, they're not educated on this universe, and that's okay. They're not supposed to be, and we need their support. We need them. You know what I'm saying? We need the people that don't live and breathe this stuff like we do to come out and just enjoy these films. That's the vast majority of the people that are going to support this.
They will come out opening weekend, and that's been proven with Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad.
Yes.
The issue is that these films aren't all that good. The word of mouth is poor, and that's what's killing these movies. So if we actually get a movie, be it Wonder Woman or Justice League, perhaps, and they're good, you know, fingers crossed, it will have better legs, it will have better critical reaction, it will have better word of mouth, and there'll be a better, you know, overall feeling for these films. Go ahead, Rick. I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's basically, in a nutshell, what I was going to say is that the thing why that works in our favor in terms of these the audience members not necessarily connecting all these dots in the way that we do is that, just like you said, Bill, if Justice League comes out and there's a preview and it has Batman and the Flash and Aquaman, it just looks cool and it looks like a good, you know, film for the summer or whenever that's getting released. I don't even know. But anyway, so the general audience member says, hey, let's go check that out, and then they don't necessarily automatically connect it to BVS or Suicide Squad, and that's a good thing. Because if these films have this negative connotation, then we don't want them to anyway, right? So all it has to do is be good. Just be good. Just a good movie. It gets word of mouth, and then my God, the bar seems to be set so low right now. I think that if this thing can just be like a C with critics, my gosh, just think about what a positive reaction that is, and you know, oh goodness, looks like DC's finally on track. This film is remarkably better than the other films by virtue of comparison. So again, that can work in our favor. But I tell you what, though, and I said this last time when I said Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman have to work. Well, you know, Suicide Squad as it stands right now is not working, and we'll see what the final numbers are, and hopefully they're respectable. And then there's Wonder Woman, and let's just say Wonder Woman's not good, and it has a backlash with critics, and it doesn't do very well. And then let's say that happens with Justice League. Now, this is what scares me. If that happens, do they really move forward with even a Ben Affleck Batman at that point?
I think they do. I think that's going to happen no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what? No matter what.
Okay.
No matter what. I don't think. Okay, let me ask y'all this.
You don't think at that point they say, you know what, this sucks, but we have to just start over?
No, I
think they would go back to just Batman. I mean,
they'll go back to Batman. They'll go back to Batman, and it's going to be Ben Affleck. I mean, they will. That's going to happen.
I hope you're right.
Flash and Aquaman supposedly starting to go in production within the next year or 8 months, whatever it is. Do you guys see that happening at this point?
I feel like I do. I feel like the directors are
they're sure acting like it.
Yeah, they're ready. They're starting to talk about pre-production and
because like the Flash is supposed to start in January, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we're hearing more about these two films in their pre-production than we did about Wonder Woman when it started.
Yeah.
Because for a long time, Wonder Woman was like, "Hey, is that actually happening?" And do they have a director? Oh boy, that director quit. Oh, they got a new director. So we're hearing more about these other ones at the same point.
It looks to me like they've got all the chips. Warner Brothers has all the chips. They push them to the center of the table, and they're going to make these films. They're going to do Flash, Aquaman. We're going to have Wonder Woman's is already in the can. Justice League is filming. We're going to get that, and the solo Batman films come hell or high water, and then we'll see where it all shakes out in the wash sometime in 2018, right?
Right, and now the rumor mills and running strong that Man of Steel 2 is being seriously considered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wish the Batman v Superman was truly Man of Steel 2. So I hope Henry Cavill gets his own solo Superman film instead of being just a part of an ensemble.
Yeah.
And frankly, second fiddle to Batman because, look, even in BVS, Batman was the main dude, I thought.
Well, especially in Justice League, how much of a second fiddle can he be when he's dead?
He's dead, yes.
He's a broken fiddle.
He's got to get out of that pine box.
Oh, God. What would he say if he were alive today? Let me out of this wooden box. Anybody?
Why did you only spent money on a wooden box, Bruce Wayne, cheapskate?
You're a billionaire, so, all right. You said you had a secret or something you want to share with everyone?
No, as we're talking about, people's reaction to Suicide Squad and whatnot, I just had a buddy that chimed in on a Facebook thread, Richard McCrohan. Bill, Richard, he came to the BBS.
Yeah.
Good. He's a good dude. Yeah. And then he just said this. He said, "Rick, you really said it best. This movie is a mess. If I had been with Ange, his wife, I'm pretty sure we would have walked out before it got decent." That's harsh. This guy's a huge Batman fan, by the way, and liked BVS a lot. Pretty sure we would have walked out before it got decent. This is how bad it is. Trenton, his son, told me that critics were really tearing the movie apart. I told him, "Hey man, never listen to critics. Not every movie can be Pulp Fiction," his son's favorite. When we walked out of the theater, he said, "And about those critics, Dad," to which I replied, "Don't listen to me ever again. I'm an old F-U-C-K.
That's funny.
Just wanted to share that. That's a pretty funny story. Anyway, there you have it.
That kind of sums it up in a nutshell. A lot of the reaction to Suicide Squad. So I think we haven't done this in a few weeks, maybe a few months. Ryan has a review from our iTunes part of the Batman on Film podcast. So you want to share, Ryan?
Yeah, there's a couple of 5-star reviews we have here.
Okay.
This one is called Honest Disclosure, and it's from Uberman. He says, "BOF is a great listen while I'm working in the cave. The crew is thoughtful and informative to Batman and DC on film. They tell it like it is. No millennial melodrama. You can't be butthurt until you've done Squat Day. Plus, I'm eagerly awaiting the spinoff podcast, The Rick Shoe Diaries."
Rick does have I don't call it a spinoff podcast, but I am producing a podcast for him. You want to plug that, Rick, while you got a good
Sure.
segue?
I mean, as you guys know, I have my political site and everything, and I'm going to launch a podcast for Left Shoe, and Bill has graciously agreed to help produce the first one to kind of show me how it all works, and I'm looking forward to it. Zaki Hassan from the HuffPost we've had on our show before here, and he'll actually be my guest, and we'll be talking about. And he's also a Muslim American, and we'll be kind of tying a lot of things in about the current state of affairs and what's going on with his folk here in America and the current political climate. And Bill, your wife is actually going to be on this one with us. Announcer Rachel will be on as well.
Crossover.
And we're going to have a couple of and then the other two guys that help me out and do Left Shoe with me that really make it what it is, Jeremy Grunkley and Michael Malloy, will all be on together. So it'll be a really good conversation. And then after this first one, I want to have people with opposing views come on and hash it out in a very intelligent and respectful way. But a lot of these guys that I argue with on Facebook that I grew up with, it looks like we're hating each other. It's all just fun banter, but we do disagree. But I'm looking forward to getting these guys on the show because people like Ben Harris and Jeffrey Davenport, people will be very, very surprised by the by the way we actually talk when we're on the phone or in person about this stuff, it's good. I'm proud of those conversations, and I'm looking forward to broadcasting them. So.
All right, I will not be on it. I'm just a producer.
Yeah, and I don't want any affiliation with politics and this Batman site. There's separate opinion of mine. If you're a conservative and you like this Batman and you like this site, man, I love and respect you. Please don't ever think that I think conservatives are evil or stupid. Okay, moving on.
We got another review?
Yeah, I can do one more. Great podcast. It's 5 stars, and it's from one of our pals at the Everyone Loves the Drake podcast, and they say some nice words about me, which I kind of like, which is good. He says, I've been a huge fan of the Batman on Film podcast long before I ever did my own podcast. Batman on Film is the best place for no-nonsense Batman news and information. Bill and the guys tell it like it is. They don't hold their punches, but they are very fair. These guys are true fans. They love and support DC Comics and the film franchises. Listening to this podcast should be mandatory for anyone who calls themselves a Batman fan.
Oh, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
That is spectacular. Who?
Yes,
does that person have a Twitter account I can say thanks to? That's a great freaking.
Yes.
Yeah, I would love to reach out to the individual. And do me a favor if you don't mind, sir. Read a really bad one.
A really bad one?
What is the who does the thing? Is it Jimmy Fallon where they read the mean tweets or whatever?
Let's see. There's one that's a 4-star, and I'll read you the 4-star part. He gives a good review, but then at the bottom he says, but yeah, the podcast is good. My only complaint. This is from Mighty Matt 84, and the title is the podcast Batman deserves. But the thing that knocks it a star is that he says, my only complaint really is when Jett refers to Christopher Nolan as Chris, as if they're on a first-name basis and are best buddies having barbecues together or something. That annoys me. What? But they are buddies.
Hey, I will say this. I was at the Dark Knight Rises Batman on Film watching party with Bill in 2012, and it was an unfortunate, sad day because a lot of things were derailed. CNN, Bill was supposed to be on CNN that afternoon, and anyway, it was unfortunate because the day before was the Colorado shooting, which that obviously is far more serious than us kind of missing our boat on some plugs. So, but with that said, we were there, and Emma Thompson and Bill were
Emma Thomas.
Emma Thomas. No, Emma Thompson. Kenneth Branagh's wife.
I did.
They were texting about Hamlet, but anyway, they were Emma Thomas and Bill were texting one another, and I just went, wow, that's pretty awesome, man. Or maybe you were emailing. I don't know. You guys were communicating on your phone.
Look, I'm not trying to be, show off anything, but anytime I've had a conversation with Mr. Nolan, and I have called him Mr. Nolan as much as I've called him Chris on these podcasts. I first called him Mr. Nolan, and he said, "Please call me Chris." So even with my Texas upbringing, I have a hard time calling people of stature by their first name. But he insisted. But I still call Mr. Uslan. He told me to call him Michael, and I still call him Mr. Uslan or Mr. U. So another example on my thank you letter.
Yep.
That Mr. Nolan hand wrote me on his own stationery, which I'm actually holding in my hand that I have framed in my office. He does sign it Chris. So take that for what you've done.
I just know that you had you were communicating with his wife via text, and I just thought that was cool. So
they are very nice people. I owe a lot to them. I do consider both of them to be friends. No, we're not having barbecues. I'm not meeting him down at the bar to watch a soccer match or a football game at any time, but he's a great person. They were very good to me. I'll say that again, and I have all the respect in the world for him and his wife.
And let's be fair, Bill. They're British. They're not really interested in barbecues anyway.
Probably not. Maybe bangers and mash at a pub with a Guinness, and that would be.
Yes. Chris Nolan
sounds wonderful.
Didn't Nolan grow up in Chicago too? Partly.
He is half American. He has dual citizenship. He is an American and a Brit. It's funny because he still speaks with a British accent, and his brother speaks with a straight-up American accent. So, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works. I've got a couple of buddies from Iran, actually, and they're twins, and they own a cleaners that I've used for years. Super guys. Anyway, one of them sounds like he just moved here, and he's 40, and the other one sounds like he's from here. They've both been here since they were like 10. It's interesting how that Some people just adapt and others don't.
Okay, let's just finish it up here. I don't think Suicide Squad, guys, see if y'all agree with me or not. This is not going to be a film that we're going to talk over and over again like we did with Batman v Superman. What you think?
No, I don't think it is what it is. It's
I mean, Batman v Superman wouldn't. We could not stop talking about it. Something came up over and over again about it.
Yeah.
So I think maybe on this one, I mean, here and there we can bring it up, but I don't know if we're going to have another whole podcast dedicated to Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
So
no, I would like to share my thoughts maybe next week if I get an opportunity this week. I hope
to see it again. Yeah,
I do want to see it again. I want to see it
fine.
on 3D and.
Because I'll say this, Rick. Yeah, I've seen it 4 times. I have liked it less each time, so I need to stop.
Yeah, and that's not good. And see, with BVS, I like it just a little more every time I see it. It might eventually get like it might not be a flimsy B at some point. It may a staple B.
I told the guys last week that I still watch Batman v Superman. I say I'm not, and then I put it in. I watch the whole thing.
Hoping that it'll be good, though.
Yeah, hoping that I'm gonna all of a sudden go, oh my God, that's a masterpiece. But it's not going to. But I still watch it. I don't see myself watching Suicide Squad when the DVD or when the Blu-ray comes in either. So anyway, let's go ahead.
Oh, I think that's the difference. Like, you know, we've got to keep watching BVS to be like, do we really like this? There's good parts in here. With Suicide Squad, I know what it is. I know the parts I like. I know the parts I don't like. When I get the Blu-ray, I can just forward to the fun scenes with Deadshot or the cool scenes in Ace Chemicals or, you know, the things with Harley and Batman, and that's that kind of thing. So
good point.
And the best, and by the way, I want to say this: my 2 favorite scenes in the movie. I already talked about the one at Ace, and the second one is when Batman captures Deadshot and his little girl jumps in front. That's a strong scene, man.
Yeah.
That's so well done. So bravo to that scene. I love it. I'll watch that. I'll buy the Blu-ray just for those 2 scenes alone.
All right, Justin, what's your hopefully final take on Suicide Squad and moving forward with the DCEU?
Yeah. I feel like with Suicide Squad, I'm enjoying the entire like package of Suicide Squad. You know, I like the movie. I gave it a B. I am gonna go and try and see it again this week. You know, I'm hunting for the action figures. That's fun. But yeah, I mean, I'm still enjoying the residual stuff that's connected to it, just because that's all we got, you know, until June of next year, and you just got to make the best of it for me. I like it. I can't wait to see it again, and looking forward to. I'm more looking forward to how they're going to release this on video. Like, are they going to have extra cuts? Are they going to have an Ultimate Edition? I don't. Who knows?
Hope they do. I do hope they do a different cut of it. I would like to see that. Yeah. All right, Ryan, what do you think?
So what I want to do, and I want to get your guys' take on this. I wonder if what you think about this, Bill. I wanted to bring up my idea, my pitch for a Suicide Squad sequel.
Oh man. Okay, that's cool.
Okay, so you know, based on the end credit scene of Suicide Squad, you're like, oh man, well maybe Batman's going to bring the Justice League and shut them down, or, you know, Justice League versus Suicide Squad. But I'm thinking that's a little bit too over their pay grade to do something like that. But you know what would be cool is if it was Batman and the Outsiders versus the Suicide Squad. Because
that would be cool.
You've already got Katana. You could even retroactively be like, Katana was like a covert agent for Batman like the whole time in the first movie. Mm-hmm. And then you could bring in some other cool and quirky good guys like Metamorpho and people like that, you know, from the Outsiders, and then you still have Batman, and he wouldn't even have to be in the whole movie. Batman's like their general or whatever, and you could have him for a limited number of scenes so he doesn't steal the show completely. And then it could be like quirky good guys versus quirky bad guys, but it's still all under the radar, and I think they would work well together. And then Batman could be like, here, Waller, here's how you do it. You know, use these people like this, and then there could be some kind of thing that they're both like against each other on, or trying to do the right way, or some plot or something. But then at the end, they both have to team up to take down Waller herself, or something like that, which I think would be kind of a cool concept for a sequel.
I would like to see the Outsiders in a film. Yeah. That's kind of the opposite of Suicide Squad.
Exactly,
you know?
And I think that's why it would work so well.
Yeah. And I like the idea. Here's the thing: I love the idea of them taking down Waller.
Yeah, exactly.
Waller out Lex Luthor in Suicide Squad. She was awesome, and you got her plan, and you could understand her manipulation.
Yeah, you want her to get her on at some point.
Yeah, she was so great. The cast is great. The cast, all 3 of these movies so far, the cast is saving these films for me personally. They just are. That's what's saving these films. But anyway, Bill, I'm sorry, you had a question?
No, I was going to say, go ahead.
Okay, so
wrap it up.
By the way, to backtrack here a little bit, I had to look it up because I got to give this place a plug. It's called Fielding's Wood Grill in the Woodlands, Texas, which is north of Houston, about 3 hours south of Dallas, and it's actually technically in Shenandoah, Texas, but it's the Woodlands.
That's the
Anyway, it is phenomenal. Just want to give that a plug. And for anybody out there that I would love to hear from you guys that are fellow Star Wars fans as well, hit me up on Twitter, and let's discuss the Rogue One trailer there because I've got some strong opinions on it. I want to hear yours. Follow me on Batman on Film Shoes, please. I'm trying to build that thing up, just for fun. It's not. I wouldn't call it a legitimate source like our mothership. It's just a fun site for Batman fans. I'm just trying to have a little fun with it. So hit me up there, and if you as always, left shoe politics. If you care about hearing a bunch of people arguing about something that doesn't really ultimately matter in the end anyway, because we're gonna have a zombie apocalypse by 2020. Okay, that's all I got.
Very good. All right, and let's backtrack. Justin, you want to plug anything real quick?
Yeah, we got a new episode of Let's Go Out last week. We talked about Suicide Squad and Ghostbusters and Stranger Things. So if you want to check that out, that would be rad.
I definitely want to check that out. And I'm very disappointed that Ghostbusters is a $70 million deficit, which means it probably needs a sequel. Because I think it deserved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. So that's unfortunate. But yeah, I want to check that out, Justin, for sure.
Yeah.
And I still want to do a podcast with you and talk about beer.
Yeah, it has to happen.
We need to, you know what? You need to come to Dallas. We need to set it up in my bar and drink beer.
Do it live.
About it.
There you
and
go.
then, Ryan, you get here. Bill, you can drive up. Let's do it.
All right, Rick, I'll hit you up later. Justin, you want to plug your Twitter?
Yeah, and so you can find me on Twitter at J_Rocca, and yeah, I love hanging out and chatting on the internet with people.
All right, Ryan, plug anything.
Okay, follow me on Twitter at SMB_Ryan. Please keep talking about this stuff. It's super cool to talk to the fans. Keep leaving us iTunes reviews. And I guess this week I just want to highlight some more cool podcasts we have on the Batman Podcast Network. Everybody should follow at Gotham Rogues Pod. That's the Gotham Rogues Podcast. Mike's doing a great job with that podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a cool opinionated fireside chat with a buddy about good DCU information. So that's a fun little podcast to listen to. So give that a shot.
And speaking of the Batman Podcast Network, I have like 2 or 3 podcasts that have joined that I have yet to enter in yet, but just because my schedule is crazy right now. As you guys know, I'm a football coach, so August is here. It means my workload is like sky high right now when it comes to that, and so my time's limited. So I'm going to hit them with the high this weekend and get some BOF stuff done. Take it away, announcer Rachel, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Batman on Film podcast, a proud member and sponsor of the Batman Podcast Network, BatmanPodcastNetwork.com. You can listen to the podcast via iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Spreaker, and wherever good podcasts like this one can be found. Follow Jett on Twitter at Batman on Film and on the BOF Facebook fan page at facebook.com/Jett.BatmanOnFilm. Email Jett via Jett@Batman-on-Film.com. Follow Rick on Twitter at ShoeRick and on Facebook at Facebook.com/BOFShoe. For Jett, Rick, the BOF Roundtablers, Justin, and Ryan, I'm announcer Rachel. Thank you and good night.